Putin will never listen to Trump. Putin will tell Trump to go take a hike. The idea that Trump comes in, or Vance comes in, and kind of cajoles Putin to sign a peace treaty where he only gets to control what he's already occupied, which is 20% of Ukraine, is simply laughable. Putin's goal has always been the destruction of the Ukrainian state and the destruction of Ukrainian identity and the transformation of this rump Ukraine, minus the southeast, south and the east and the Crimea, this what's left of Ukraine, transformation of that into a little Russian puppet state, which would resemble Belarus, with a pro-Russian dictator. That's Putin's goal. At the moment, Russia controls no big major cities, which Russian nationalists claim are Russian cities. Odessa, Kharkiv, Kiev, Dnipro, Zaporizhia, in Russian nationalist eyes, these are Russian cities. The Trump plan doesn't give any of those cities to Russia. It just freezes what Russia already has. So the idea that Putin would like such an agreement is wrong. And the feedback, it's ironic that the reactions in Moscow actually show a better understanding of Trump than what we have amongst Western journalists and think tankers who are in panic mode. In Moscow, they're already saying, this is not for us, this plan. So the idea that Russia would somehow gain from a Trump plan is, I think, a product of this bias we have in the West, that somehow Trump is working for Putin, as it were, that Trump's some kind of Putin puppet. And I think this is completely mistaken. I'm not saying that because I like Trump, not at all, but let's look at the reality on the ground. Now, the Ukrainian position, which everybody, of course, ignores as well, is that Zelensky, as the president of Ukraine, in the constitution, he's not allowed to give up territory. He hasn't got a right to say, okay, that's gone. He has no constitutional right to do that. If he were to consider that kind of peace plan where 20% of Ukrainian territory would stay under Russian control, that would be something that he'd have to put to a referendum. And if it went to a referendum, it would only pass potentially, because I think many Ukrainians don't see an end to the war, don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, so they may be a bit fed up of nightly bombings and everything, so they may vote for something like that in a referendum. But the only way that would really pass is if there was NATO membership included. If Trump is serious about such a plan, where he wants to get the majority of Ukrainians in favor of it, then there's only one scenario I could see would work, where Ukraine would be approached and said, look, nobody's going to recognize this 20% as belonging to Russia. We understand this is recognized as occupied Ukrainian sovereign territory. But let's just freeze the conflict for now to end the bloodshed. You get to keep your 80% of Ukraine, which is not occupied. It gives you peace. It gives you time to rebuild, refugees coming back, etc. People are no longer dying. But the security comes from joining NATO. Now, Trump hasn't said that. Trump said, no, NATO's not on the table. NATO membership's not on the table. And that's a product of the fact that American presidents, all the way through since Obama, Trump and Biden have all opposed Ukraine's NATO membership. The last US president that supports Ukraine's NATO membership was Bush back in 2008. But that kind of deal, I think, might get support in Ukraine in a referendum only if NATO membership was included. If NATO membership was not included, then I don't think Ukrainians would trust such an agreement to stop the fighting. They would just think that Russia would wait 1 or 2 years, rebuild up its army, and then start again. And they would not trust Western security guarantees. And they would have a point, because Ukraine's already been screwed once with the Budapest Memorandum. And that was a probably the biggest betrayal out in recent years of Ukraine. Ukraine's security options are threefold only.